right, guys and dolls, welcome back. This is Coach Gillespie from STEAM. We're talking about code.org, Computer Science Discoveries, Unit 3, Lesson 16, Mouse Input. So this one's a fun one, but disclaimer for my students at home who are working solely on the iPad, this one's going to be challenging. Why? Well, because you don't have a mouse. So you will be able to complete the code, but unfortunately you will not necessarily be able to test whether or not your code is correct. So I am aware of this concern, this issue. If you are even more concerned and would like to give me an email shout out or a comment, then I will accept that and we will discuss. But otherwise, just watch this video, go through the motions with me, and we'll call it a day. We'll do the best we can with what we've got. All right, so our question of the day for this lesson is, what are more ways that the computer can react to user input? And remember, the computer has 4 functions. It takes an input, it stores that input, it processes that input, and then it gives you output. So input, storage, process, output. That is what a computer does. All right, so we will continue to explore ways to use conditional statements to take user input. In addition to keyboard commands learned yesterday or at some point in the near past, you will learn about several ways to take mouse input. We're also going to expand on our understanding of conditionals to include else, which allows for the computer to run a certain section of code when a condition is true and a different section of code when it is not true. The vocab that we're mastering for today is conditionals. Conditionals are statements that only run when a certain condition is true. So remember that Boolean logic, true, false, true, false. So we're setting up these situations with the computer where it is going to be searching to determine if something is true, it will run one set of commands or code, and if it is not true or therefore false, it's going to run a second set of commands or programs. We've got a lot of new code here. We've got key went down, key went up, mouse did move, mouse down, mouse went down, mouse went up. So when we talk about mouse down and up, we're talking about the clicker button here. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. We've got sprite.visible, and then we've got our if-else statements. And also in Google Classroom, I'll be posting a resource for you. It is a map level of if-else. If you need any more instruction on if-else, you will have that. So let's get started. All right, level number 2 is a prediction level, and unfortunately I can't delete my previously answered answer, so we'll just hide that real quick. Let's talk about our if-else predict. Read through the code below, pay special attention to the if-else block in line 10. After discussing following questions with your partner, if you have a partner, or discuss it with yourself, write down your predictions below and then hit that run button to see what the program does. So here's what we're looking for. What happens when we press the space bar and what happens when we don't press the space bar. So let's look at this code line by line. All right, so line 1, we've got a variable set up for balloon. Line 2, the balloon is assigned to a picture of a balloon. Line 3, the scale of the balloon is decreased to 0.06, so the balloon is made a little bit smaller than its original size. Line 5 starts our draw loop, our function draw. Line 7 sets our background to white. Line 10 is where our if-else statement begins. So line 10, if key down space. So in plain English, if I push the space bar down, so if I press the space bar, then line 11 will activate. Line 11 says balloon scale equals balloon scale plus 0.02. So what does that mean? Plus 0.02 scale. Scale is size, so plus 0.02. That means the balloon is going to begin to grow if I press that space bar down. Else is the false section of this Boolean logic if-else gate. So if I press the space bar down, meaning if the space bar is down, it's true, and therefore the balloon will grow. If I don't press the space bar, then line 13 activates, and the balloon scale equals balloon scale minus 0.01. So that means if I'm not pressing the space bar, we should see that balloon start to deflate. And then finally, line 17 is our draw sprite so that we can actually see those sprites that we created. So my prediction is if I press the space bar, the balloon is going to inflate. If I do not press the space bar, the balloon is going to deflate. So go ahead and hit pause if you need to so that you can fill in your prediction, and we will continue on. There's my prediction. Now I'm going to hit run. Let's see what happens. Am I right? Right, balloon is shrinking. I'm going to hit the space bar. Balloon is growing. I'm going to let go of the space bar. Balloon is shrinking. All right, I'm going to hit the space bar. Balloon is growing. And that's it, folks. If else statement at its best. Let's move on. All right, here's a super important video. Let's take a look.
Conditionals, like if statements, are great for getting something to happen when a condition is true. But what if the condition is false and we want something else to happen? That's when the if-else statement comes in handy. At first, an if-else statement looks a lot like a regular if statement. But by clicking the plus button down here, we can add another condition, the else. The if-else statement will do one thing if the Boolean expression is true, and will do something else if the Boolean is false. In this case, we're going to create a sprite in the middle of the screen. Next, we'll add a draw function, followed by a white background. Now we'll add an if-else statement by dragging out the if block and clicking the little plus button to give us an else. Let's give the conditional something to check, like whether the right arrow button is being pressed. If the right arrow is being pressed, then the sprite will go right. But if the right button isn't being pressed, then the Boolean will be false, and the code in the else section will run. In this case, it will move the sprite to the left. Finally, we'll draw the sprite and see what develops. Now that you can use the else statement, your programs can perform twice as many actions and reactions as before.
All right, let's keep going. Level 4, these gears already spin one direction when you press the space bar. Now you want them to spin in the other direction when the space bar isn't pressed. Do this. Make the gears spin the opposite way when the space bar is not being pressed. So I'm going to minimize my instructions so we can see better. I'm going to hit the run button to see what I've got. All right, I got nothing. I'm going to hit the space bar. I've got movement of my gears. Okay, so let's look at our code. Line 1 variable, 4 is a variable, 7 is a variable. Those are my gears. Line 10 starts my draw loop. 11 is the background white. 13 starts my if statement. So if I press the keyboard space bar down, then these actions are going to occur. The rotation is going to get a different value. So now I want to add an else statement. So if the space bar is pressed, this will happen, else something else is going to happen. So the way I get the else is I click this little plus sign right down here. I click this plus sign to get the else block to appear. So if I hit space, the blue, green, and red gears are going to rotate in one direction, else they're going to rotate in an opposite direction. So I'm going to set up the same type of scenario here, but just backwards. I'm going to grab a sprite.rotation, call this one blue gear. All right, then if blue gear is moving backwards or minus rotation, I'm going to grab a plus equation this time. Plus, and then I go and get another rotation block. Drop it in the right spot. Blue gear, And if it's a -1 for spacebar, I'm going to do a +1 for no spacebar. And then I'm going to repeat the process again for green gear and red gear. All right, so dot rotation, and that is green gear. And I'm going to get another dot rotation for red gear. I'm going to go to the math drawer, and both of those were +1 in the first scenario, so this time they're going to be -1. Grab a minus equation block, back to the sprites drawer, grab another dot rotation, drop it in there. That is green gear -1, and this one is going to be red gear -1. All right, so take a look at what I've done from lines 14 down to 20. 14, 15, 16, -1, +1, +1. 18, 19, 20, +1, -1, -1. And then my draw sprites is at the bottom. So now, when I hit this reset and run, what should happen is they will rotate one way when I'm doing nothing, when I'm not touching anything. Then they're going to rotate the other way whenever I hit the space bar. All right, so I've got movement. That's good. Now let's hit the space bar and see what happens. And they go the opposite way. So that's it for this puzzle. Hit pause if you need to. Otherwise, let's hit finish. All right, bubble 16, not line 16, gee whiz. Control the gears. Here's the same program, but with one small difference. Read the program carefully, especially line 13, to figure out how to control the gears. Run the program and test whether you were correct. Make the gears spin the opposite way when there is no user input. All right, so let's see what's going on. Lines 1 through 8 are our variables that were created. 10 starts our draw loop. 11's our background. Ooh, line 13, if mouse down. Okay, so those of you stuck on the iPad, this one you're just going to have to bear with me and watch. Okay, so if mouse down, then I'm supposed to see that rotation. Otherwise, I should see no rotation. So I'm going to hit run. No rotation. I'm going to click the left button on my mouse, just like I normally do to select things. And let's see if it, yep, there it goes. So you guys see that red circle whenever I click the left mouse button down. And when I let go, no motion. So click down, motion, let go, no motion. All right, so just like before, they want us to set it up so that if I'm not clicking the mouse button, it's rotating in the opposite direction. Now there should be a way for me to highlight these. I'm going to hit Control C for copy. Let's see if it lets me paste them down here. Control V for paste. All right, so I pasted just in the wrong spot. So I'm going to drag these down. There, there, and there. And why did I do it this way? Because I'm trying to save myself a little bit of time. That's why. I'm going to drag this over to here to store it for a second. Drag this one up. Change that to blue gear. Blue gear gets a +1. Then green gear gets a -1. And so now the only one I have to completely redo is the red gear. Red gear gets a -1 as well. And I go to the sprites drawer and I grab a rotation block. Red, gear, -1. So now the way this should work is I should see motion, and then when I hit my mouse button, I should see opposite motion. So reset and run. All right, so motion. I'm going to click my mouse down and opposite motion. Motion, no clicks. Click down, opposite motion. And that's it. Hit pause if you need to. Otherwise, hit finish and continue. Right, so we got level 6 of lesson 16, mouse clicks. Here's a program that drops a balloon down the screen. Make the balloon go up and down according to whether your user is pressing the mouse. Do this. Add code that checks whether the mouse is being pressed. Move the balloon up if the mouse is down. Otherwise, move the balloon down. Okay, lots of ups and downs and a little confusing, but we're going to figure it out. So first, I'd like to see what I got. Hit run, and the balloon is slowly falling. All right, so variable is line 1. It sets the balloon, and it changes the scale, so it's a small balloon. Line 5 starts my function draw loop with my background, line 6. Line 8 is a comment tag. It doesn't hurt my code at all. It just gives me information. So line 8 says, if the mouse is down, the balloon, move the balloon up, otherwise move the balloon down. So line 9 says balloon Y equals balloon Y plus 1. Remember, Y, if you turn your grid on again, if you need further reminder, Y in this point, to increase in Y, you go down. It's opposite of math class. To increase in Y, you go down. So that's why it's a plus 1 instead of a minus 1. So I've got to grab a, go to my control block. I've got to grab an if else. All right, so if else, I'm going to pull it in here. And then if what? If what? Well, if I push my mouse down. So this says mouse button down. And then notice it says left button. So some mouse buttons will have left button, right button, all that other stuff. So if the mouse button is pushed down, I want the balloon, let me put this balloon down here in the else. So if I push the mouse down, I want the balloon to go up. Otherwise, I want the balloon to sink. So I'm still working with balloon.y because it has to do with the y value. So balloon.y will do what? Well, the y value will decrease because I want it to go up the screen. So balloon y. And it's really important that you understand that concept. X and Y coordinate understanding at this point is super important. So balloon Y will decrease by 1, meaning it will move up the screen because the Y value increases as you go down the screen. So therefore, you kind of got to do opposite of what maybe your intuition is telling you. All right, so as this reads, line 9, if the mouse button, left button is pushed down, then the balloon will go up the screen. Otherwise, if I'm not if I'm not pushing anything, then the mouse or the balloon will sink. So let's see if I'm correct. Run. All right, so balloon is sinking because I'm not pushing anything. I'm going to now activate my mouse clicker. Mouse click. Balloon starts to go up again. Let go of the mouse. Balloon starts to fall again. Click the mouse. Balloon goes up again. All right, so at this point, if you need to hit pause, do so. Otherwise, we're going to hit finish. Da-da-da! All right, level 7. This program uses an if block to shake the blender when the mouse is on the left side of the screen. Do this. Run the program to see how it works. Add an else to make the mixer shake when the mouse is on the other side of the screen. All right, so I'm going to hit run and see what I got. Got a blender shaking. So if I put my mouse on this side of the screen, the blender stops. If I put my mouse on the blender side of the screen, the blender starts to shake. And I'm going to turn my grid on here so that you can see it. We're talking about X value in this one, left and right X value. So that's what they're going to be using here to set up this scenario. Let's see if I'm right. All right, line 1, 2, 3, 4 is our variables, our blender, and our mixer. Line 6 starts my draw loop. 7 is my background. 8 is a fill. 9 is the rectangle, which is the floor that we see over there. All right, 10 is where my if statement starts. So if mouse X is less than 200, all right, so we're talking about that center line here. So if mouse X is less than 200, you see that number underneath my reset button? If it's less than 200, then the blender X is going to get a random position and the blender Y is going to get a random position. Okay, so that means that blender is going to be shaky right around where it's currently stationed. So I'm going to hit this plus sign down here to get an else block. So if the mouse X is less than 200, then the blender will shake. And what I wanted to say is else, if the mouse is not less than 200, meaning the only other option is it's greater than 200, then I want the mixer to shake. So I'm going to go and get a mixer X and a mixer Y. Okay, let me change these from sprite to mixer. Mixer, mixer. All right, and now I need random number blocks. Ooh, our math drawer is growing. That's good. Learning all these new pieces of JavaScript. All right, so now, how do I know what random numbers I want? Well, I'm going to come up here and look and see where the mixer starts off. So the mixer starts off at 300x, 300y. 300x, 300y. So I'm going to jiggle around that number. So I'm going to say 295 to 305x and y. And I'm going to say the same thing, 295 to 305. And where did I get that number again? I took a look at where the mixer is currently, and I just chose numbers. I chose numbers around that same coordinate. So now let's see what's going to happen. All right, so mouse on the left, less than 200, the blender is shaking. Now mouse on the right, greater than 200, the mixer is shaking. Less than 200, more than 200. All right, at this point, hit pause if you need to. Otherwise, let's hit finish and continue. All right, so this one you got your choice, A or B. I'm going to do A. You're more than welcome to do both. Remember, if you do both, I give you a bonus point for each extra level that you do. Ladybug walk. Let's see what's going on with this ladybug. All right, this ladybug should only move when the mouse is near the bottom of the screen. Ooh, bottom of the screen. Talking about that Y value again. All right, you're going to use a conditional to make sure the ladybug only moves when the mouse is near the bottom of the screen. Do this. Use an if block to check whether the position of the mouse, world mouse Y, is below a certain point. Add code using the counter pattern to increase the X bug value to make it move. The bug should only move if the mouse pointer is near the bottom of the screen. All right, so let's see what we've got for code down here. We've got variables, got my function draw loop, and I got a draw sprite, and that's it. Man, so they're just leaving it up to me to create. Okay, so I'm going to move this up so that I can see a little bit better. So I know I need a control. I know I need an if statement. So I'm going to drag this down and put it above. Why did it do that? That was weird. Put it above the draw sprite. Okay, so if what? If what? Well, if my mouse Y value, drag this over. So if mouse.y, oh, and I need a math here because it's a math equation. So if mouse.y, what in the world's going on here? I screwed this up. Let me pull out my mouse.y. So if my mouse.y is greater than 200, which means my mouse will be at the bottom of the screen. How do I know this? Well, look where my mouse is currently. So if my mouse value is greater than 200, that means it's going to be at the bottom of the screen. So mouse.y, drop that in there. So if mouse.y is greater than 200, what do I want to happen? Well, I want the X value of the ladybug to change. See, take a look at my example. I want the ladybug to move. Now, here we go. Which direction? Well, if I wanted to move to the left of the screen, that means the X value is going to decrease. decrease here. So I'm going to start with sprite.x, and that's called bug. How do I know this? That's what they named it up here. So my bug x is going to do what? My bug x is going to decrease, so that is a subtraction equation. All right, so bug.x, pull this over, bug.x minus how much? I don't know, minus 2. You pick a number. I think minus anything bigger than 2 might be a little too fast for a little old bug. So let's see if I'm correct. So I'm going to hit run. Nothing's happening, which shouldn't happen. There's no movement because my mouse is not on the screen yet. So I'm going to put my mouse up here. Once again, no movement. Why? Because I said it's only going to move if my mouse comes to the bottom of the screen. So here we go. Below 200, bam. Starts to move. Above 200, it stops. Below 200, it moves. Above 200, it stops. Below 200, it moves. Above 200, it stops. Okay? So at this point, hit finish. Hit pause if you need to. And let's move on. All right, the level that everyone loves, the assessment level, the one that goes in the grade book. Woo, woo! Assessment level. All right, this program should only shake the creature when the mouse is pressed and only show directions when the mouse is not pressed. So we want it to shake when it's pressed, and we want the directions to show when it's not pressed. Do this. Change the code so that the creature only shakes when the mouse is pressed. Change the code so the directions only show when the user is not pressing the mouse. So let's take a look at what you got to start with. Hit run. All right, you got it shaken and you've got the words, press the mouse to shake the creature. You've got your variable set up, you've got your function draw loop, you've got your creature dot rotation, that's why it's wiggling. You got your draw sprite, and it says display the text when the mouse is not pressed. And this is the text. All right, so the first thing you're going to have to do, you're going to have to grab one of those if-else statements. If-else statements, all right? And you drag that over. I put that right there. So if what? Well, what did it say in your directions? It says this program should only shake the creature when the mouse is pressed. When the mouse is pressed. All right, so what am I going to do there? Take a look in your world drawer. All right, so that's as much hint and assistance as I'm going to give you for this assessment level. I want to see what you can do. Super excited. Once you finish that up, take a look at your challenge level. As always, you are free to choose any one of these challenge levels that you want. You got a lot of choices this time. If you want to do them all, I'll give you a bonus point for each one. Okay? And that is it for lesson 16, everyone. Remember, if you are on an iPad, I do understand that you won't be able to test your code, and unfortunately, you won't be able to debug as well. But I do need to see some evidence of programming here. So there's no reason why you can't get some code on the screen. It just might not work as well as everyone else. Okay? That's it for lesson 16, mouse input. This is getting us ready for lesson 17, which is a mini project. Going to be great. All right, that's it. Have a great day, everybody.